Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Today I'm going to go over the Dendrobiums that you can choose from, or help me choose from, because some of them I will override because I want them in there, that are going to go into the 2021 Project Orchids set of Dendrobiums. I'll have a chat about each one and why I think it ought to be there, and then you can have a think about. The thing is with the project orchids, what you've got to think about is not what you're looking at now. You've got to think about what's going to happen to it. Okay, I'll predict what's going to happen to it, but as we have found out in previous project orchids, some of them don't behave as anticipated, and some of them don't even make it till the end of the project. So we'll have a go. And I've got my list here because my memory's not that good. There are 8 on the list, but there's really only 7 because one of them is an either or, and I will have one of those 2 in there. So even if everybody says I should drop them tough, one of them's going in there, but it's an either or. But we'll get the first one down. A lot of these haven't got labels on, but luckily I know what they are. Now, this was a little plant I got at Malvern from a vendor from the Far East, and I saw the picture from a distance and I thought, I've been after that for a long time. And I looked the guy, picked the plant up, held it up to him because I didn't know how good his English was going to be. And I said, "Are you sure this is variety Laos?" "Oh yes, absolutely sure. Got yellow centre." So I thought, right, we'll have it then. But until it blooms, I don't know. And if it's not the plant I wanted, I can't exactly get at him, can I? Anyway, this is a Primulinum variety Laos. So you can look up what the blooms look like because it hasn't yet bloomed. But that's what I bought, a set of canes, a few had leaves on. They promptly dropped. It is a sort of semi-deciduous. It doesn't drop its leaves every year. And what I grew last year was 2 nice new canes that are roughly the same length as the existing canes. Now, Primulinum not variety Laos, just the standard one, is like 5 or 6 times as big as that. So I don't know whether that is a blooming size plant, and that particular variety is like a dwarfed version, in which case I don't know whether the blooms will be smaller. They are certainly more attractive, or they are in my eyes. So that's yet to bloom. Yeah, mounted orchid. Grew 2 nice canes and established itself quite a nice root system during the last growing season. Its blooming season is late winter into spring. So if it's going to bloom, it's not going to be too long about doing it. But there's no sign of any buds yet. It's too early for those buds to be showing yet. They're triggered by the winter rest type thing, so it is a winter rester, or a much drier in winter, a bit cooler and brighter definitely. It's up in the roof, brightest light I can give it. But basically the buds really are liable to be triggered by the extension of the day lengths and the slight raise in temperature following the drop in temperature for the winter. So it's not the actual drop that triggers the buds, it's the return from the drop. In other words, life's getting better. Insects may be about. Let's chuck some blooms out and get pollinated. There's not a lot of point in putting up blooms in the middle of the winter if there's no insects around, is there? So that's where we are with that one. That's Dendrobium Primulinum variety Laos, and that'll be plant number 1. Okay, plant number 2 represents the Nobiles. This is a complex Nobile hybrid, so relative to the species, it's probably quite a long way from it. That makes it far less prone to needing the proper treatment just to get it to bloom, if you see what I mean. The chances are it'll probably bloom on your kitchen windowsill. Maybe not as good, but reasonable. And the reason I picked this one over the other Nobiles I've got is it's still slightly out of season. Yeah, it was bought from Burnham's Obviously not last year. We didn't do much as regards Burnhams last year, did we? Because we were closed down for a lot of the year. But anyway, I bought this in bloom, and it would have been in bloom on these two canes. Yeah? And that was midsummer, August time. So at that time it had two canes. It had a broken new growth, which Sarah did point out to me, and two other new growths just starting in the middle of summer. Now, new growths on a nobile should be starting in early spring, into spring, yeah, start of the growing season. So these were growing at the wrong time of year, and they carried on growing, and they grew through the winter, and they then sort of spent last year just sat there. Now, if it was going to repeat its blooming at the same time as it did before, it would have bloomed in the summer, but it didn't. It held off. But it's obviously got to the point now where it can't wait any longer, and it's decided that on those two growths, we've got the buds. So coming into bloom on those two canes, but not the full length of the cane. And I'm just looking back down those oldest canes that I bought in bloom, and they didn't bloom right down the full length either. They bloomed to about halfway down. So anyway, on here we've got 2468 on there, and 2468, 2467 on the other one. So those canes are still out of season. However, at the start of last year, we did start two new growths at the right time. Those are these. Bigger than anything else on the plant, and I feel very pleased that I've managed to grow nobile canes this early on in the plant's life bigger than the nursery did. So these are our latest two. If these are going to be in season, they should be getting some buds soon. I can't believe they're going to go a whole growing season without blooming. So I think we may well get a second blooming on these two canes at the right time, which is soon. So we may get some buds soon. However, the whole plant's going to have its hormones in a bit of a mess because it's currently deciding to put everything into the blooms on those canes. These haven't got any buds yet, so I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. So this is an unpredictable nobile because I haven't had it long enough to have settled it into a standard annual routine. And it will be interesting to watch. We will get blooms, we may get another flush of blooms, and we should get some new growths. We've got a pot full of roots, which you can just about see through the opaque pot. And that's where we stand with that one. So that's representing the nobiles because it's not quite standard. It's a little bit out of season still, and it would be nice to see if another growing season kicks it back in to growing the new growths at the right time of year, therefore blooming at its logical time instead of a bit early. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, some nobiles do bloom quite early in the in the winter, and some wait right out into spring before they bloom. So we'll see how that one goes. Okay, the next one's a bit of a biggie. Hasn't yet bloomed for me. I grabbed this last year on my visit to Burnhams in one of the one of the periods when they were actually allowed to open and actually have customers in, even though at that time it was limited to weekdays. I always go on a weekday anyway. I don't want to go at the weekends. It's too busy. And given the circumstances, I certainly didn't want to go when it was busy. Anyway, this is representing the black hair types. So this is Dendrobium infundibulum. I better not say that wrong, or I know somebody will be after my behind. I like to say infundibulum. Anyway, infundibulum. I will be corrected, and I ought to say it properly anyway, rather than mess about. It has blooms, so it is a blooming sized plant. Yeah, so it's got remnants of places where it has bloomed before. It's only got 3 canes on it, but recently it's decided to have a spurt of roots. Now, I'm reluctant to repot this simply because it's in good bark. It's in Burnham's bark, and it hasn't been in there too long, You know, if you dig down into that pot, this bark is all good stuff. So I'm reluctant to disturb it now because I don't think I need to. Now, what's going to happen with this? At some point, I think this cane will bloom. It has nubbins. They're there. One there, and one there. It's only just recently finished growing, actually, because that leaf's smaller than the rest. It should, if it's growing properly, get up to full size but remain a little more upright than these sticking out sideways. That would be a terminal leaf. But we have some new root growth. What else is going on in the pot, I don't know. That is a mature blooming size cane that may well bloom. And the beauty of this, if it does manage to bloom, first, it'll be a first time bloomer for me. I've had a cross of this crossed with Lowii, I think it is, another black hair type that hasn't bloomed for a while. It's not doing very well, actually. It got hit by scale and I hit it back with the systemic and it decided to virtually die. But it's just hanging on. It's got one cane that's still got some leaves. This one, however, has not needed any treatment because it hasn't got any bugs. So we should get blooms on there. The blooms are very large, almost Cattleya-like in their shape and certainly their size, and being a black hair type, they will last ages. So that's what I'm hoping for that. Sometime, I would imagine when the longer days come, we should get new growths too. And it would be nice to get 2 new canes on there this year. Change of environment, long enough ago that it's probably forgotten about it and settled into this environment, so it might manage to put 2 new canes up. But obviously you're looking at a pretty sizable growth for a single season. So that's that one, and why I want that one in there. We've got to have a black hair type, and I like this one. I'll say it now, many people requested Senilli, you know, the old man, Mr. Hairy. It's been in the project Orchids already. To put it in again seemed a little more than it needs. Anything that happens with that gets filmed in normal videos anyway, whereas this one doesn't. You know, when was the last time you saw me film this? So that's the idea. Some of them are getting included because they're oddities and we don't do much with them. So this will make us look at it a bit more closer as the season goes on, even though it is a bit big. Obviously in future videos you won't have all the clutter in the background. I'll actually arrange it so that we're just filming the video at the plant with the black backdrop. But that's that one then. Right, up to plant number 4. This has been requested by quite a few people. Dendrobium spectabile. So a latoria type, so a warmer grower. No winter rest for this one. Although for me, because of the cooler temperatures, it's going to slow right down almost to a standstill. But as there are no canes actually growing at the moment, that actually suits it fine. If you see what I mean, because it's not trying to grow at the moment, it has no new growths. However, we do have a nice spike pushing on, so we will get blooms on that soon. They should be very long lasting, so in theory, when we do the first set of Project Orchid videos proper, this may well be in bloom. I would think it would be. We did actually break a spike off down there, much to my annoyance, and we have got a well-chewed leaf there. That's not me. That didn't happen here. But apart from that, it's not a bad looking plant. It's had a leaf chop there, but it's not bad. I mean, this was a present from Zana when we did our plant swap at Burnham's. And I know that that pot is far too big for that plant. And at some point it will come out of that and get repotted. But I'm not in a rush to do it because, again, this is in good quality bark. What I don't know is how good the root system is in there, but just digging it, it's not only there, it's growing. We've actually got growing roots there, which means I could repot it if I wanted to. Not ideally suited for a mount. It ought to stay in a pot. But logically, if I take great care with this, it can stay in that large pot. I'd rather it didn't. What I'd really like to do is gently lift it out, tip it over, and let all the loose stuff fall off and see what's left hanging onto the roots, and then see how big a smaller pot I can get that in without disturbing those roots at all. In other words, all the bark that's stuck to those roots and everything stays there, and then it just goes in a smaller pot and tucks some of the bark down the side, so it ends up getting half the volume of the bark, which means it won't stay wet. Now at the moment this is good quality bark, it's not going to stay wet, so I'm not worried. But down the line I will be. You know, if it's still in that pot next winter time, when the bark's starting to get a bit older, it could stay wet too long. With the lower temperatures, we should, you know, so we've got to think about it. Anyway, that's that one. This will be its first blooming for me. It is a blooming sized plant. There are many stumps where it's bloomed before. So, although it is actually a division off of what was a blooming sized plant, but it is, you know, obviously with the spikes it's doing, it is blooming size. It will bloom for us. And then in the not too distant future, with the warmer days and longer days, we should get new growths. And I'd expect more than one on this plant, but we'll have to wait and see. So that's a latoria type, plant number 4, spectably. Okay, plant number 5 will be a challenge. I always like to have one in the set that may or may not make it till the end of the set. And if anyone is going to fail, it's going to be this one. This is representing the Phalaenopsis type Dendrobiums, so warmer grower, no winter rest, although it's not growing at all at the moment. And why it's a challenge is it's got virtually no roots. Now at the moment the plant is healthy and not suffering. That's because it's not growing. So it's got enough stored energy in these nice big fat canes to survive quite happily with a poor root system. Its challenge, or our challenge, my challenge, somebody's flipping challenge, is to actually get it to sprout a new growth and produce a new root system alongside, which it has enough energy to do even though it's got next to no roots. All I've got to do is make sure that that pot doesn't stay wet for any length of time, because without roots to use it up, it could rot the base of the plant, and then it won't grow new growths. It'll just keel over. So the base of the plant is exposed, not buried. Plenty of ventilation in the pot to make sure it dries. I don't want to handle it too much because it's staked. If that stake wasn't there, the plant would just keel over, and the 2 or 3 roots, spindly little things that are in there, would flick all the bark out and it would lie on its side. So it's a challenge plant. It's Thailand black, and its full name really has got Sarnook on the front, which I believe is the actual nursery that actually produced the hybrid. So it's got part of the nursery name within it. But there we go, it was bought in bloom, so I haven't bloomed this yet. Most Phalaenopsis type Dendrobiums are capable of blooming more than once out of the apex, and sometimes from a leaf joint lower down. So this is the most mature cane, the only one that's bloomed. It could, in theory, bloom again. But I'd rather it didn't. I'd rather it produced at least one good strong new growth and established a root system. In which case it'll make it. Because I've got the hang of these now. I didn't do well with these for a long time, and it was just that it was the same as the latoria types in my mind. They're warmer growers, they don't have a winter rest, and they could potentially grow throughout the year. So I was keeping them wet in the winter. Yeah, well, that keeping them growing throughout the year is only true if you keep your temperatures normal. If you drop them down in the winter like I do, the plants stop growing. And if they're not growing, what on earth are they supposed to do with all that water and feed in the pot? They don't use it. So the media goes soggy, the roots rot. So I never did very well with them, but we've gone past that point now. Took a long time to learn that flipping lesson. And it was just basically I couldn't disbelieve what I was reading and hearing about this type of dendrobium, and the same with the latorias. Well, these are continuous growers. What's the problem here? Well, the problem was the low temperatures and the short days. So that's that one. Beautiful blooms, and I'd like to see them again. but I don't want to see them until I've got a lovely strong new cane somewhere near the size of that one with an associated root system. So that's why that one's in there. Okay, as far as these two are concerned, it's either or. One of them's going in the set. But you may influence me as to which one it is. What we've actually got here is Dendrobium Jenkins CI, which to all intents and purposes is like very close to a miniature version of come on, brain. Lindleyi. That name just flew out of my head then, and it gently came back in. So as you can see, they have similarities. They have short stubby canes with ribs on them, and a single leaf. This one tends to grow lying flat, so the bulbs tend to form like a mat, whereas this one they do tend to stick a little bit more away from the what they're growing on, whatever that might be. Now this was a relatively new plant and I didn't expect it to bloom, but it did. So we have actually had some blooms on here, and for the size of the plant I thought they were pretty spectacular. Blooms are incredibly similar on both plants. The difference is that on the Lindleyi the spikes are longer and they have a lot more blooms. The blooms themselves are actually very similar. Jenkins CI has more spikes but less blooms on each one. So as far as a mass bloom is concerned, this is the one that's probably going to do it, and this one should bloom again. As it bloomed last year, we know its blooming size. There's no reason why it shouldn't this year. There's certainly no reason why this one shouldn't. We usually have quite good fun with this one, playing spot the spikes, because obviously with a camera you're getting a different view. I've got a three-dimensional view with my eyes, and so when a little tiny spike sticks out of one of these little tiny bulbs, I can see it. But with the two-dimensional view of a camera, I mean, I counted, I think it was something like 18 spikes last year when they were just starting to grow. And everybody said, "Ah, you're pulling our leg. There's no spikes on that plant. I can't see any spikes." They were there and they took a while to grow. So one of these two's going in. Don't know which one yet. Maybe you can influence me. So yeah, and they both need basically the same sort of treatment. These do need a winter rest. It is the way that they would normally grow. They have very leathery, thick leaves and good storage canes for the size of those leaves. They do eventually drop their leaves, but the canes need to be quite old before they get to that point. If you have a look on here, we've got some older leafless bulbs tucked in the back. But then we've also got these growths are 2 years old here. The new ones, last year's growths, are right on the edges. Yeah? So same sort of thing with this. These will drop leaves eventually, but they hold them for quite a few years. And this one, the new growths are the great big fat ones sticking out. So those are the ones that are liable to bloom. And it would be nice when this one comes back into growth if one grows this way, or at least one. Because at the moment they're all going that way. The one growth I had in this direction when it was a new plant for me actually rotted off. I lost it. But it means there is a growing point in under there somewhere. So there we go then. And this one by the end of the next growing season is going to be off the mount in places. I mean, it's right on the edge of the mount there, almost going round the back, hanging off the bottom, hanging off the edge. And most of the growing will take place on the edges, although some will take place in areas like this. There will be some growth internally. New growth on this one will be on this edge round here, and hopefully one here. Maybe some will go out the back, who knows. So those are those two. Nice and bright in the winter, cool them down a bit, cut the feed off, and a trickle of water just to stop them shriveling too much. And then wait for the magic to happen later in the winter as we get into spring. So those are those two. Now this one you don't ever see. This is Dendrobium Tortilla. This was a present from Alberto, and when I got the plant failed, it rotted, didn't do very well at all. But it had a couple of little kikis that I managed to save. These are they. That. So there's 2 plants on here, and that. Those were the 2 little kikis that sort of managed to establish some roots. They've dropped their leaves now, or one has, one will soon. But during last season, we grew 2 lovely big strong canes. Yeah? And I remember what the plant was like when I got it, which I think was blooming size. I think Alberto had some blooms on it. And this cane, I think, may be bigger than that. So this, I believe, is now blooming size. It's never bloomed for me. I don't really know what the blooms are going to look like. But it is a winter rester type. What it's got going for it now is a good root system that it produced last year. So 2 little kikis grown on and produced 2 nice canes in the proper season, terminal leaves sitting there at the moment, resting, doing nothing. Now, I don't know what's going to happen because it's this time of year with 2 reasonably mature canes on it, I haven't experienced before. So this season is new. I don't know what it's going to do next. If it reacts a little bit like many of the others that rest, it should come into bloom as the day lengths get longer. But whether it needs to wait for them to get quite long, or whether the blooms may be triggered by just an increase, not a dramatic increase, I don't know. So this is a wait and see. I'm not looking it up. I'm not going at trying to find out, oh, the bloom should come at this point. I don't want to know. I just like to watch plants sometimes. So it is a rester type. It hasn't bloomed for me. I'm reasonably confident that this cane is big enough to produce some blooms. I don't even know where they're going to come out. But I suspect they will come out because it's got a look of a nobly about it. Very nobly-like look. So in theory, the blooms will come out opposite the leaves, as they are alternate leaves. So we may get some nubbins. It may not bloom. It still might not be blooming size. But it'll still be interesting to see what the base of those plants do. Are they just going to throw up 1 new cane? Or are they going to try and produce a few more than 1 this time round? So it's an unknown. I don't know what this one's going to do next, and I don't really know what to expect of it in the next growing season, apart from the fact it should do reasonably well because it did last year. So it wasn't affected by the heat wave, seems to do okay. So yes, so that's the set. There are 8 plants in there. Although strictly speaking there's only 7 because one's an either or and one of them's definitely going in and one of them definitely isn't. Yeah, so really there's only 7. So you say which one you would like to see dropped in the comments on this video. Those are the only comments I will be looking at. I won't go looking at comments on 3 videos down the line. So if you want to make a choice as to which one we drop, the comment needs to go on this video, and please stick to 1. And then we'll do the same as we did with the Oncidium types. Yeah, they're even on this page on my notes. Yeah, we added up how many people said they wanted plants dropped. The Brassia won, Sunset, Miltonia Sunset came next, and the Twinkle came third. So we dropped those 2, but we did add 1 in. So instead of going down to 5, we came back up to 6. So with the Dendrobiums, choose the one you would like to see missing. In other words, the one that you would least like to see the progress of, leaving the rest. And then we will drop 2 and end up with either 5 or 6. I haven't made my mind up yet. So, and thanks for your help in advance. It is a help. You know, I could just make the choice myself and you'll get what you're given, which is certainly what I did the first couple of times we did the selections. I just chose them and that's what we had. But I think it's quite nice to involve people and see what they think, and we'll go from there. The next set I'll be doing is the Cattleya type. I've already chosen which ones will be in the selections. Obviously I've got to get round to filming it, and I don't want them too close together because it's too much of the same thing one after the other. So the Cattleyas will probably be done towards the end of this week or something like that. And then we will have the others. That's going to be an interesting set. See you next time. Thanks for dropping by.